Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today at Dialogue, the Diapoint podcast. This is a very special edition, and I'm very excited about our guest today. It is Abby Lyons, who wrote the book, What is Diabetes Anyway? I absolutely love this book and the story behind it. And Abby's going to share more about all of that with us now. Thank you, Abby, and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on. So yeah,
So, you are the mother of a child with type 1 diabetes, but you are also a lot more than that. If you could please, tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of the journey of how you got here.
I do have a child with type 1 diabetes. He was diagnosed when he was 2. He's almost 8. So it seems like yesterday and also a really long time ago all at once. I have two other sons. So I'm the mom of three boys. I have a 13-year-old and an 11-year-old. I've lived in the UAE for about 16, 17 years, originally from Manchester in the UK. So a bit of a change of lifestyle moving over here. Have my own marketing agency that I set up when I had my youngest son, to create a bit more flexible working, although working for yourself isn't massively flexible for those first few years. We are 13, nearly 14 years in, and I feel very lucky to have that business behind me, especially with the likes of Rocco having type 1. You need that freedom and flexibility. So I feel very lucky to be able to work for myself and all the freedom that brings.
Amazing. And how was it going back to, always diagnosis? A
Yes.
parent, especially a mom, will never forget that day, that feeling. How did you figure out or suspect that Rocco may have type 1?
I mean, as soon as you say it, you never forget. You never forget the feeling. It's such a physical thing, isn't it? Like I've got goosebumps all over my body.
Hmm.
Just as soon as you say that, it's like the one place you'd never want to go in your head, but
Yep.
it's so just there and you can remember every second. So, I mean,
Hmm.
I knew nothing about type 1 diabetes, which is the story with most people, right? Nobody really cares about it or wants to know more until it's staring them in the face and they suddenly have it or they're responsible for someone with it, which I think is probably one of the main reasons I'm here today. And I wrote the book because people have to care before, they have to know more, because diagnosis can come so late that you're losing people you love so unnecessarily. Whereas if there was awareness and education, that wouldn't happen. And I don't just mean amongst people, I mean with doctors, I mean with nurses, I mean with schools. The care of type 1 diabetes here is still terrifying. I'm kind of digressing a bit and I will go back to the diagnosis. But since Rocco's diagnosis, I've had friends with children diagnosed. They were in a hospital with somebody reading off a sheet. Right, if suspect type 1, now check this. They didn't even have a finger prick to check the blood. They had to send blood away. And I'm like, I went to the hospital with one. I was like, takes 5 seconds. Why are you not checking? Has he got ketones? Oh, I don't know. They haven't checked. What?
The
So
first time we were in the hospital, sorry to interrupt you, for DKA, I had a DKA meter and everybody was like, what is that?
how?
Like it was sorcery. I know. I'm like, how is this not possible?
Go to the pharmacy and buy one. They sell it in the hospital. What is
Mhm.
going on? So, yeah, listen, I had no idea. Rocco was my third child, right? So by this point, I've got three boys. I'm feeling pretty confident that I know what to do. I had a bit of a break, so I was a bit like, God, these toddler years are really hard. I forgot how hard this is. But was pretty confident, very relaxed. He was a big boy, used to eat a lot. Generally would eat a lot, would be very active, would drink a lot. We live in Dubai, it's hot, kids are drinking a lot, right? So his nappies would be really full at night. But again, I didn't suspect anything because he would drink a lot. So obviously he's got a heavy nappy. So he started to get a little bit more tired, which again wasn't massively noticeable. I remember the nanny sent me a video of him in his high chair while I was at work, eating and falling asleep while he was eating. And he just looked really cute. It was like, oh, he needs his nap, cute. I look back on that video, it's weeks before, and it's so harrowing to watch. And what I didn't realize, he'd lost quite a lot of weight. And I think we all look back at those pre-diagnosis pictures and think, how did we not know how skinny our kids had got? Like just overnight, they seem to go from little chubby little people to skinny, and I just didn't notice. And there was one time where he'd had his nap, he'd woken up, and he was sometimes a bit shaky after his nap. And again, I just thought low blood sugar, but not from a diabetes perspective. He needs a snack. So I'd give him a snack and he'd be fine. And one time he came down the stairs, walked towards me and fell over, was really wobbly. And I said to my husband at the time, we need to get him checked. I'm worried it's something wrong with his brain. He's really shaky. So I took him to the hospital, gave him a snack. By the time the doctor saw him, he's running loops around the emergency room and they're like, he's fine. I'm like, I know, but he was really shaky. I'm like, do you not need to scan his brain? Is it something going on in his head? Like, no, he seems absolutely fine. And obviously this was the early stages of the low blood sugars or whatever was going on in his body, it was failing. So we took him home, and then 3 weeks later, we traveled to the UK and left the kids here with my mum and the nanny. So we were going back for my husband's grandma's 80th birthday. So we were in the UK. We were going for 2 nights. And before we went, Rocco had a really bad nappy rash, but it had gone quite fungal. It was like, looked really sore. So I went to the doctor and took my mum with me. He said, listen, it's just a fungal infection. Put this cream on, he's going to be fine. Then while I was away, which is about 3 days later, my mum phoned me and said, listen, he's holding his head in his hand, saying his head hurts and he's been sick. So I'm going to take him back to the doctor. So she took him to the doctor, and the doctor messaged me because he'd been our family doctor and said, listen, Abby, I'm worried about his blood sugar because this nappy rash and these signs could be type 1. And I was like, he said, but I don't want to test for it while you're out the country. So when are you back? And I was like, he said, no, he said, I want to test for it when you're here, but I also want to test it fasted because if I test it now, I don't know what he's eaten. So I don't want to panic you unnecessarily. So we got on a flight that morning at 5 a.m. the next morning. This was maybe 10 o'clock at night. We got back on a flight. We went straight to the doctor's. He took a urine sample, looked at me and said, it's type 1 diabetes. I was like, what? He's like, diabetes? I'm like, no. And he's like, you need to go straight to the hospital. So I went to our normal hospital and the endocrinologist wasn't there. He was on holiday. She was on holiday. So we had to go to a different hospital, which was really panicked me. I'd had all my children at the same hospital, was really comfortable there. So we go to this other hospital. I'm still not sure what's going on. We're Googling it on the way there, obviously. And it said, there was a medicine that he'd had for croup that said could impact blood sugars. So I'm pinning all my hopes on the fact that this is not diabetes. He can't have type 1 diabetes. He's not old enough, doesn't eat enough sugar, very healthy boy. Obviously, all the misconceptions that you have. So we get to the emergency room and they start doing blood tests. They're trying to get blood out of him, and his blood was like jelly. It's turning to sugar. It's thick. He's hours away from DKA. And he's hungry because obviously they're always hungry. They feel like they're starving. So we got him some pasta from the canteen. As I do, I'm going to feed my child. They didn't stop us. I have a picture of him in the emergency room. His blood sugar must have been 700. And they let him eat a bowl of pasta, which could have killed him. And he's happy. He was fine. He was fine. He ate the pasta, chilled out, watching the phone, fine. And they come back and they tell me again he's got type 1. I'm like, he's got diabetes. And I'm like, well, type 1 or type 2. And I'd read about it in that hour of waiting. I was like, it must be type 2 because that's reversible. No, it's type 1. I was like, what does that mean? And nobody could really explain it to me. So we've just got off a flight. We're exhausted. We're stressed out. We're looking at our child who looks fine. Then they admit him and a doctor comes along and starts explaining type 1. But I'm again like, he doesn't have type 1. There's nothing wrong with him. He doesn't have an incurable disease. And then it started to hit. But what really hit me was, I now don't know how to keep my child alive. I can deal with anything, but I'm scared of my child because I don't know how to feed him. I don't know how to fix him. And I don't know how to care for him as his mother. So what do I do? And you're tired and you're stressed and you're terrified and you've got all this information piling on you. You're going to be here for 4 days and we're going to teach you how to look after him and then you'll go home. I'm like, I can't take him home. I'm not a doctor. I can't do that. And it was just this feeling of, this is never going to be okay. I'm never going to be able to fix this. I'm never going to be okay with my son having this. And then it's like, and how do I tell people? How do I tell everyone about this? I don't know what it is. He seems to be very ill, but I can't explain why. I don't know why he's got this or what it really is. I don't know what to do. And I literally locked myself in the bathroom in the hospital and just sobbed. I was just like, I don't want to do this. Sign me out. I don't want this. And that feeling comes with so much guilt of, well, this must be my fault. And also, I'm not okay with it and I don't want it. And then there's all that guilt of, well, he's got it. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. It's not your thing. This is his thing. But I'm like, no, I don't want any part of this. It was such a emotional few days of, you don't get the chance to accept it. You just have to suddenly go from being a mother to being an organ and a doctor and a nurse and a caregiver and a counselor, and you're not equipped to do it.
That's so true. Yeah, I can only nod my head yes, because I felt all of that. The guilt, the also locked myself in a bathroom at home. I think a lot of moms have done that, and I'm sure any parent of a child with type 1 that's the primary caretaker can relate to this so well, because it is so frustrating and not enough people understand or know about it. And even still, it feels like we're living in this world and we hear about it all the time. And then when we see something or someone that is still has all these misconceptions about it, it's really shocking that in
And it
20.
angers me. And I have to remind myself that I didn't used to know stuff, but I'm so intolerant of people who are ignorant to it because of the damage it does to our children. I've
Mhm.
been doing these readings in schools and it is eye-opening. A lot of kids know diabetes. And if you ask anyone, what is diabetes, even the teachers, it's caused by too much sugar. And that
Mhm.
is it angers me that type 1 and type 2 are even called the same thing. They're totally different. It impacts the same organ, yes, but it is a totally different condition and even managed totally differently. How can an
Mhm.
incurable autoimmune disease be called the same thing as a curable often lifestyle that doesn't even require medicine in some cases? How can those two things be categorized the same? And the problem in the region is the shame that comes with it. And that for me was my biggest driving force. I will not have my child being ashamed. And, on our group, when I've seen you and other parents who are sending your kids away on residentials and having to fight with schools and fight with nurses to say, you will not exclude my child. And I remember looking back at that going, they exclude them. They're seen as people of determination.
Mhm.
Why? Because one of his organs doesn't work. I mean, he's not sick. He just doesn't
Right.
have the thing that he needs. So why is he treated as somebody who's different? And I get it. It's a big responsibility to caretake any human who has type 1. However, it's part and parcel of life. And those our children and people living with this condition have it hard enough without people looking at them going, did you eat too much sugar? He was 2. No, I wasn't feeding him too much sugar. He was on organic everything, and it's infuriating. But I find myself, I did a reading for kids that are 3, and I taught them, and they got it. And they started to understand and ask questions. And I showed them this life-saving lollipop and what you can do with a lollipop to save someone's life. And it's like, it's not their fault. And someone said, can I catch it? There's all these conversations
Mm.
need to be had. Little kids think they can catch it.
Yep. An
And imagine,
adult, an adult asked me if I had a cat by chance that was type 2. An adult asked me if she caught it from my son. An adult. Yes, it is.
it's
I,
ridiculous.
yeah, and that's where it starts, like at very early age. And then also teaching kids that they won't discriminate against someone with diabetes. They'll be more accepting, but God forbid if they do have the symptoms, they would recognize it in themselves or in a sibling or someone else. So it's just so important to talk about it.
That recognition, if there's so many people out there with type 1 and there's so many people that don't talk about it, if you saw a person collapse on the street mumbling, and you're going to assume they're drunk, but they could be type 1, they could be
Hmm.
hypo or hyper. these our kids are going to go away. And you were just talking about Erin going off to university. They're going to go away. They're going to sample the delights of university. They're going to do things that are going to put them in difficult situations. And all you would hope is that if they are ever in that situation, the people around them will know what to do. And I had a girl that used to work for me before Rocco was diagnosed. It was type 1. And I'm really ashamed to admit, I didn't even know she was type 1. And honestly, if she'd have told me, I would have just gone, all right, and we've all got something,
Mhm.
and she used to work so hard, and she would skip meals, and she would make herself so ill. And it wasn't until her flatmate, who also worked for us, tried to get in her room one morning, and she was non-responsive. But she knew what to do. She broke the door down. She knew she was low blood sugar. She gave him some sugar, gave her some sugar, got her to hospital. And then I got the call. So I go to the hospital. And when people move to the UAE and then they work for you,
Mhm.
feel responsible for them. And in a
Yeah.
way, you are the call because they don't
Yep.
have a difference here. So it's like, who's the most responsible person I know? And that terrifies me that I'm the most responsible person that they know. But it seems to be that way. So I go to the hospital and then I have to phone her parents. And I was like, I should have done better. I should have known more. And for me, it was like, even in that moment, I needed to understand more. And I feel like it's our duty to understand more about the people around us, not just with type 1, but any condition that they are
Mhm.
living we can support with. And then when Rocco was diagnosed, she was my lifeline, and it was really difficult to have some of those conversations with her because my fears about my son's future are obviously her fears about her own future and the things that none of us want to talk about. But she was so amazing and so supportive. And I think my journey with Rocco, she was 8 when she was diagnosed, and she must be 30s now, early 30s. She's living back in the UK. She had a parent that just sent her to school. Go to school, here's a biscuit, get on with it. Because they didn't really know anything else. We'll finger prick you in the morning, we'll finger prick you at night, which I kind of envy. We know so much now, but I kind of
Mhm.
envy the simplicity of it and not knowing everything that we know. And she was like, you're doing so much for him. It's such an inspiration. I think on the back of mine and Rocco's journey, what I learned, I then started to teach her things. But then I was like a helicopter parent at work. What are you eating? Have you eaten today? Have you done your bloods? What's your blood sugar? Georgia, your alarm's going off now. Have you checked it? And she messaged me recently and she's in the UK. She's like, Abby, I got a pump and it's changed my life. And because
Oh.
hate wearing the Libre. Even the Libre, she was like, it's too much. I don't want it on my skin. So to hear that she's gone on this journey and she's really focused on her blood sugars and her health and her lifestyle, and she's got a pump, I felt like such a proud mother. I was like, why do people with diabetes feel like they shouldn't be getting access to all of this and shouldn't be shouting about how well they're doing? Because it's a challenge every second of every day. And I think you said it to me back in the early days, was it's the mindful disease. Because you can't really be beyond that moment because we don't know what's going to happen with those blood sugars in 5 minutes. That next dot could be crazy high or crazy low, or, in the next minute, our lives could change again.
I just met with another mom this morning. Her child was recently diagnosed, and I said exactly that to her. And she was like, "Oh yeah, because it is. You're the only number that you have is that number." And like there's no time to grieve, there's no time to think about what's going on or what just happened. Um, or, if you have an emergency situation, your child's just gotten glucagon and then that's passed. But you can't think about that now because you need to just be where you are with the next thing. And it's just a constant, yes, it is like a Zen disease, but not in the Zen sense that there is nothing Zen about this. Reverse the chaos in the present or trauma in the present. I don't know what to call it, but it is. It's super, super hard to manage, but you've done it amazingly and you've written a book about it. So when did you get to that point, or what was kind of the tipping point where you thought, okay, he's going to be okay and I can do this? And then what inspired you to write a book about it?
That thought he's going to be okay. I don't even know if I've ever got there. I've got to the point of we're gonna get through this. But even yesterday, he was on his way home from golf. The nanny messaged he's been sick in the car. I actually think it was car sickness, but that fear of sickness, ketones, DKA, norovirus, can't get anything into him. How do I manage his sugars? When one of
Mhm.
my kids is sick, it's like, oh God, I'm going to be dealing with vomit and God knows what else. It's gross. When he's sick, it's like the sickness is the least of my worries. It's
Yeah.
like, am I going to be able to make him eat? When do I give him insulin? Is he gonna have insulin? Shall I let him eat? If I let him eat and then I don't give him insulin, then he goes high. And what if his ketones then go up because of the high blood sugar, not because he's sick? You're literally like, I feel like it's a game of chess in your
Hmm.
head all the time. He's going to want that pizza later because we're ordering pizza, but the kids are having this now. Do I give, right? So I'll give him water now, right? Rocco, 10 minutes. It's literally like, it's like playing a game of chess with bouncy balls, I would say, because nothing goes in the direction you want it
Hmm.
to go. And just when you feel like, oh, got the hang of this, know what I'm doing. Why is he 300? Why is he, I don't know. I don't know why.
Yeah.
It's a
They
virus.
they grow. Chess is a really good analogy, and even for a lot of people think if you get a pump, then you don't have to do anything and it's so super easy. And it's not. You still have to do things. And they're like, yeah, but the pump gives insulin. Yeah, but the pump cannot anticipate all of those things that you just described. And that's only just one situation. Like our mind is in overdrive like that all the time.
All the time, all the time. And you never switch off. And I've got one of those rings, that monitors your sleep, and which
Oh,
is the
yeah.
first thing you can do because I know I don't sleep. And I'm quite lucky. I have help at home, and sometimes the nannies will do the night for me. If I've got a really hectic day at work the next day, I know I'm going to need to get a few solid hours. I'll get one of the girls to watch him overnight. I've got 3 nannies. I have them on rotors. One goes to school, one's here, so that I can manage everything. And the other night he was at his dad's house. And I looked at my sleep. I fell asleep at 1 a.m. and I was awake from 6:30. And I woke up, I think, 7 times during that cycle of sleep. Not because anything woke me up, except my body is programmed to
Used to it.
make sure
Hmm.
he's alive. And, I've spoken to doctors, I saw a psychologist, I've seen therapists, and they're like, I know, but you just have to get more sleep. I'm like, okay. But what I'm telling you is if I sleep through his alarms, he could die. That's a reality. That's not me being
Yep.
a crazy woman. So on what planet can I program my body to be okay with that? And they just look at you and go, you're right. You've got tablets. I'm like, well no, because then I'll sleep through his
Then you
alarm.
won't wake up. Yeah.
Well, this is not going to work for me. So it's this vicious cycle of to deal with diabetes, you have to be so strong mentally. But to be strong mentally, you need sleep. And you don't get any sleep with type 1. And I don't know if that sleep will ever come for me now. I feel like this is just how it is. And when
Mhm.
the kids go to school in the morning at 7 and the nanny goes with him, I then generally sleep for an hour and a half. And that is my best sleep because someone is watching him. I know there's someone with him, and my body just relaxes. And I wake up after that feeling much more rested than lying in bed for 7 hours because
Amazing.
it feels safe. And I
Yeah.
think that's what it's about. When did I get to the point of thinking it was going to be okay? It was like, this is survival and it will always be survival. And that, they talk about a cure. I think in my mind, it's a bit like it's the grief you talk about. It's like when somebody has died, it's the foreverness of it. And I told the story to someone else, but when we were leaving the hospital, and actually I'd found the group that I found you on, which was, the only positive things have come out of those 4 days in hospitals. I found my people that understood, and everyone around me who loved me was making it so much worse because they were so sad and they had so many questions and they were dealing with their grief and projecting onto me. And I'm like, I can't deal with my own. You've got to back off. I need to be around people that get it. And the only people that ever got it were people on that group, right? So they were the lifeline. And I remember I was in the lift of the hospital and my mum was there, and we had Rocco with us, and a family piled into the lift and they were talking about how they'd had gastro and it's been horrendous and they can't wait to get home. And I looked at them and I thought, that feeling when you're leaving hospital is generally relief. Feel better, we're going home, this is all over. And I was like, this is only just starting. And that hit me like a ton of bricks. This is far from over. And I actually don't want to be going home because what do I do with him? And they'd said to me in the hospital, And it was really bad timing because the educator was on holiday.
Mm.
So I had a local girl that was a junior that didn't really know. She read a handbook to me, like not a handbook, a paper,
Pamphlet thing. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and it was like, if he ever goes low, this is what you do. But not like he'll probably go low 5, 6, 7, 8 times a day. If he ever goes low. So I was thinking, oh, he's never unlikely, maybe every few months he'll go low. So my expectations were already that this is going to be straight, and it's just going to be all I've got to do is count the carbs, do my insulin ratio, and he's going to be okay. That's it. Which we know is not it, because he could eat the same thing every day and get a totally different result, depending on the weather or the stress or the sleep or hormones. So we got home and we put him in bed, and we had the Libre at the time, which is one that you scanned.
Hmm.
Which again devastates me that they will give that to a family with a young child, because how can you ever be safe if you don't have a continuous glucose monitor? Like, I've been with Dexcom ever since I heard about it. That changed my life, because I'm like, right now I can see I've got information and I know he's alive. Whereas walking into his room, a 2-year-old in a cot, to scan him to see if he was going to die or not, which is how it felt. And that first night, I just sat in his room and I watched him, and I just watched him. And I had the scanner, but I didn't want to scan him. I just didn't want to do it. And it was so irresponsible, but I just watched him. He's
It's
alive.
traumatic. Yeah, that number.
I scanned him and he was 42.
Oh,
And I was like, I've killed him. He's going to die. Like, I've killed him. And I shouted his dad, and he comes running in, and I just stood there cold. I was just like, no, I don't, again, I don't want this. Like, it's just that easy. He can just die. He can go to bed and his blood sugar can be fine. And then that's it. Wake up. What if I sleep? What if I don't wake up? What if I am not equipped to be what he needs? And that fear is always there. When you get annoyed with him, or, it broke my heart last 2 weeks ago. He came to me and I'd got him a bubblegum machine for his birthday in November. And I filled it with all these beautiful gums. And it was like, when you're low, you can have a gum. It's in your room. He was so excited about it. And we got a new system which connects the Omnipod to the Dexcom. It's not FDA approved, but it's a back system, which quite a few people use. It's quite complicated. I do think it's helped in some areas. However,
is
we
this
just started,
Night Scout?
yes,
Yeah, okay.
Night Scout, which I still honestly haven't massively got to grips with, but I'm trying. The nights are definitely way more steady. I would say that. Anyway, so it kept going up to 300 for like 2, 3 weeks, random 200, 300, 400. So I'm blaming this app going
Mm.
crazy. We're all watching it, and his dad's watching it from his house, go, why is he so high? And what's not going right with this? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I'm trying my best here to figure out this new pump, and you feel this pressure to get it right for everyone. And I've got the nanny saying, well, what do I do? And I've got, everyone looking at me, and I'm like, I don't know. And I'm tired, and this is really technical, and it's stressing me out. Anyway, about 2 weeks ago, he came to me and said, Mummy, I was like, yeah, he said, all those highs, I was eating the gum.
Mm.
And I couldn't stop it. I couldn't stop myself. And I hate myself for doing it. He said, and I would eat it and then I would swallow it so that you didn't see it in the bin. So that's
Oh,
acceptable. But he must have eaten about 40 of these gums. And then I'm like, do I need to take this kid to hospital? Is his inside all like glued together?
gum. Yeah.
And again, it's like, I didn't shout at him. I just said to him, Rocco, I am not perfect at looking after your diabetes, but I try my hardest every second of every day. And if you are not working with me on that, I cannot keep you safe. So here's your choice. You either work with me on it, and when you want that stuff, we talk about it, and I'll find a time when you can have it. I never deny you. You get everything your brothers get, maybe at a different time, because he has his little stockpile. If the boys have had something, he'll put it on his shelf, and when he's low, he'll have it, or I'll give him more insulin. But I was like, if you're going to work against me, all I can do is, and I handed him all his devices and said, if you would rather do this your way and eat what you want,
Mm.
then fine, but you're going to have to look after yourself, because I'm already trying to be an organ in your body that I don't really know how to do that. And if you're then going to give me extra problems where you're going to eat and not tell me, I can't do it. So here you go. You decide what you eat when you eat it. You look after yourself. And then afterwards you sit and you're like, have I scarred him for life? Does he think I'm
No.
But it was like, I don't know what else to do than have a grown-up conversation with you because this is really serious. I'm not going to shout at you because you've told me the truth. And that's
Mm-hmm.
brave. But you've hurt your body in a number of ways. And all I'm trying to do is not hurt your body. And it's going to happen. He has so many snacks in his room for his lows. I mean, what kid can resist that stuff? He's got gummy bears, he's got his fruit pouches, and he needs them in his room. So
Mm-hmm.
you have to build that trust.
Yep.
So if I was 7, I'd want to eat them too. I don't know if I would listen to my mum saying you can't. I'd probably sneak the odd one, but
Oh
you just
yeah, I think all kids do that, at some point in time or other, or maybe more than once. And we've always had the discussion. I'm like, look, you will never be punished for anything that you eat, but you have to tell me. There's really, even though we eat very healthy and, healthier food will always give you better outcomes. Everybody needs to be healthy. I don't know where like the people with diabetes eat this way and people without diabetes don't, mind blowing, but everybody needs to eat healthy. But if you want to have like the one-off sweet thing or something, you just got to give insulin for it. And of course, blood sugar has to be in range and, a lot of other things to consider. But yeah, I think having honest conversations that are age appropriate, and sometimes even if they don't feel age appropriate, will serve them in the long run than just ignoring it.
he needs to see that bigger picture because at some point he's going to be responsible for it himself. And if he only does what he's told because he's scared of me,
Hmm.
not going to serve him. And I am a massive advocate for honest conversations with kids. And I think I probably had a lot of them over my time with my kids, with, them going through divorce and a lot of changes in their life, because I had it with my parents and no one was honest with me. And I was 6 or 7. And I've had a lot of therapy around I felt something was wrong. I knew something was wrong, but the people that I loved and that protected me told me that there was nothing wrong. So I grew up learning not to trust myself because, well, I felt this, but they told me that. So it's like you grow into a person who doesn't trust your gut. And that's something I never wanted for my kids. I wanted them to always feel empowered by their emotions and their feelings and to be able to talk about them and express them. And I think to expect that from kids means you've got to give it back to them. So I've let my kids see me be upset about things. I've talked to my eldest son when he knows I'm having a tough day with the diabetes, or he'll say, it's okay, just let it out.
Oh,
I go, because that's what I say to him when he's having a tough day.
yeah.
This stuff is basic, but I think teaching your kids the power of honest conversations and talking about how they feel. Rocco will come to me and say, I hate diabetes. And I'll go, you know what, Rocco, I hate it too. But it's okay. We're going to figure it out. Everyone has their thing, and my eldest son a year and a half ago had a brain tumor. So it was like, okay, let's not focus on diabetes for a while. And actually, brain tumors make diabetes look kind of okay because although diabetes is scary, it's like long-term scary. It's not immediately terrifying. So let's deal with something that's immediately terrifying, but you go and you remove it, and then that's kind of done. It's like there's always something. Every human has something. It's just that diabetes is every second of every day for forever, and you can't ever forget about it. And if you do, you're damaging their bodies, your own body, whatever. But it's as you say, everyone should eat healthily. It's common sense. My kids eat the same foods as each other. Monday to Thursday and Friday morning is healthy, is homemade. They're all eating the homemade granola that's keto. They're all eating the homemade dinners that are done in the Thermomix or from scratch, so we know what's in them. They're all drinking the beetroot juice and the cider vinegar and the lemon, ginger, and turmeric. They're all doing it, because it's not just Rocco's immune system that needs boosting. They all need that boost.
Everybody. Hmm.
So, but then Friday afternoon after school, they get to pick a takeaway, anything they want. So their
Mm.
lunchtime takeaway. Friday night is home cooked. Saturday's pretty relaxed. Sunday's home cooked, healthy. So it's like they know what to expect. There are no bad foods because again, if we label everything that's unhealthy as bad, as soon as they're old enough to make their choices, they're going to want the good stuff, which is the bad stuff. I did
Yeah.
it. I had everything home cooked within an inch of its life. I didn't have a takeaway till I was 16. Everything in my house was homemade. And my friends were so jealous. And I hated it. I'd never had a Chinese. I'd never been to the Chippy. I'd never been to Greg's, for a pasty, which in England, most people are living off that stuff. Especially, I was in a very working class area. So it was so unheard of. Even like you know, after school, everyone went to the shop and bought sweets and crisps, and I was
Mhm.
never allowed to go to the shop. Friday night, we were allowed one treat. We had Friday night treat night, and it was a chocolate bar cut into four or something crazy. But to me, that was like, yay. But then as
Yeah.
I hit 17, I was like eating everything, drinking everything, everything fizzy, everything, you know, that was unhealthy for me because it'd been so restricted. So for me, diabetes, winning with it is about balance.
I
And
had a
life,
similar childhood experience as you, so I could totally relate to that. Did not have like a Dorito or whatever it was until I was in middle school at a friend's house.
yeah, and you're like,
Eh,
oh.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Now it's like I don't keep chips in my house because I'll just like eat them, or I get them and know that I'm gonna eat them. Like last night we did Mexican night, which we make it healthy, and there's a lot of vegetables that go into all of it. But I'm like, yeah, I grew up in Texas, guacamole, chips, salsa.
Hey.
Yeah,
But
it's.
you know, I think the control thing is what I've got to with Rocco. He's very strong-willed. He's the youngest of three boys. He has this incredible nature about him, but he's a short fuse and he is very demanding and he's the Tasmanian devil of the family. You know, winds his brothers up. His brothers are pretty chill, but they're just like, go away. And then, you know, he just goes and goes and goes. But I think he needs that temperament for what he faces. But I
Mhm,
also know with Rocco, if I take away all of his control, he will fight for it. And what
mhm,
I've learned is to ask him questions. So, okay, Rocco, you want that? You want toast for your breakfast? The boys are allowed toast at the weekend with peanut butter or whatever. We don't have toast in the week. I want toast. Well, Rocco, if you have toast now, when I'm making lunch, whatever I'm making, you're going to have lower carb because your blood sugars will be really high from that toast and you want peanut butter and honey or jam with it. So if that's your choice for today and you want your highs from that, I'll manage your blood sugar for the toast. But then the next option is going to be a healthy one. What do you want? And he'll go, oh, no, it's not worth it. I'll be like, we're having pizza tonight. So we're going to have a healthy day. So I can dose your pizza, which we know is the most difficult thing to dose for, like the worst 5 hours of your life
mhm. Yeah.
follows. But he'll sometimes say it's not worth it. I don't want to
Mhm,
be worth it. Can I have the chicken nuggets instead? And I'll go, even though I know that's not healthy, mentally, it's much healthier for me to dose for chicken nuggets than it is a pizza. So I think it's always those battles of what's going to make you happy and think about it and choose wisely. Do you want to eat a healthy lunch and you can have ice cream afterwards? And a lot of the time he'll say yes. In a restaurant, I'll have the pasta or I'll have the steak and then I'll have an ice cream rather than I want a burger. But do you really want a burger? Is it worth it?
mhm.
Not worth it. So he's learning to make decisions that he will have to make for the rest of his life, but it's in his control.
Yeah, that will definitely serve him. Will definitely serve him. So the book. So tell us a little bit or a lot about the book, which
A
I
lot
love. It's the really like one of, if not the best kids book that I've ever read. When you sent it to me in that draft form one Friday night, I was home and I read it and I just cried. It was so beautiful, really. So again, well done. And the illustrations are also just gorgeous.
well, she did an amazing job. And I never met her. I only ever spoke to her.
Oh,
She found her for me. And I'm very visual. So I wrote the book originally and I had a 21-year-old girl that lives here illustrate it for me, very low cost, but it didn't have any faces. It was just this beautiful like line drawings. And when I went to the publishers, they were like, it's not going to work for kids. It's going to scare them. Kids need faces. So I was like, okay.
mm,
Looking at illustrations, I just realized I don't like a lot of kids' books illustrations. And for me, it's everything. You either pick
mhm.
up or not based on how it looks, right? It's not about the words. So when my publisher found this amazing lady in the UK and she sent me a picture of Rocco, I mean, she's never met him, and this could not be more him
It
if he spent
is,
his whole life with him.
yeah.
Even the smile, which is just a line, or like his he's just cheeky and it just embodied him. And that was my biggest worry was re-illustrating the book because when I was looking at kids' diabetes book, and actually this was 5 years ago, there wasn't many. I think there's a lot more now. But the pictures were so depressing. The colors were depressing. Everyone looked sad and skinny and miserable. And it was like paperbacks thin and
Hmm.
it just felt like a medical book. And I was like, I don't
Yeah.
want medical book, and this is just telling me how bad this is. This is no happy ending. Like, I need a
Yep.
bit of a happy story because this is hard. And actually, what I'd learned and what I've learned on my journey is when I wrote the book, which I wrote probably 1 year in, to get it down, because I was getting so frustrated with the way people talked about it. And I was looking back on my experience and saying one of the hardest things was telling people, because I didn't know what to say. And I've got his brother's phoning the hospital. Where's Rocco? Is he okay? What's wrong with him, mummy? And I didn't know
Mm.
how to describe it to adults. I didn't know how to describe it to kids. I didn't know how to explain it to anyone. So in the end, I actually think I put something on Instagram or Facebook so that people would stop asking me. Because I just thought, I'm ripping this band-aid off. I don't want any more messages. This is what's happened. This is what I know. This is what I'm figuring out. And my friend in Scotland sent me a book, and it was awful. I mean, bless her soul. She sent me a kid's diabetes book, which is actually such a thoughtful thing to do. I was just like, my kids deserve better than this. Kids deserve to know that this isn't a death sentence. This isn't the end of your life. This is just, you grieve the past of what life was like before, and you embrace the challenges of the new life together. And we all figure out what that looks like. It's just different. It's just a lot more planning and a lot more organizing, and also a lot more acceptance. That's not going to happen today because, I've got no sleep last night. That's not going to happen. Or we're going to go on holiday. I'm going to have to take 5 extra suitcases and argue with everyone at the airport because he is not going through that scanner. It's just that acceptance of
Yes,
it's
the
just
scanner.
different.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I wrote the book because I wanted Rocco to read it and I wanted his brothers to read it. And selfishly, it was therapeutic for me. I really enjoy writing. I'm in marketing. It's what I do. And the rhyming way this is written is how I write thoughts. I'll write poetry. It's how I'll express myself. Because sometimes I really struggle to find the right words, or, with what I've been through in my life, I'm quite a direct character. I say things how they are. I don't mess around. And that's because I like people to be direct with me. I like black and white. I like to know where I stand, what's good, what's bad. I like to know this is a situation and therefore I can figure out how to fix it. Which again, with diabetes, no matter how hard you work at it, no matter how much you learn, I can't fix it. So as a human, that's really hard for me to accept. No matter what I do to make this better, I still don't know from 1 minute to the next how this is going to go. So this book was a way of kind of saying to everyone, this is really hard. This is how to spot the signs so that you can understand how to spot the signs. This is what you do if you're around someone that's type 1. So they might be a bit moody. You need to understand them. You might need to give them treats. But actually, there's loads of good stuff because you get the low snacks. You can still do everything. And more importantly, there's so many other people like you living with it and other parents dealing with it. I wanted every parent to read this book and feel like I felt when I found you guys on that group and go, I'm not on my own. This is going to be okay. And that's what's been incredible and actually really surprising, because I think going into this, I was like, if nobody ever reads it and nobody ever buys it, as long as Rocco's proud of it, I don't really care. This is worth it. And, the messages I've had on the group, the people that message me on Instagram, the mums that I've met at readings, when I did the school talk show, the parents that were messaging me afterwards, the people that had said, your book has changed my daughter's life. She's so proud now. And she said, thank you for looking after me. She wants to take it into school. Or I have diabetes. It's helped explain to my child what I have and they understand now finally. It's made a difference. And that has really made me think my little story is one little story, but it can create so much awareness, so much education, and educating one person can save a life.
Yep. That's so
And
true.
everyone talked about it. And, I did a reading in Virgin in, it was to buy more Friday night. And I was like, crazy. Why are we doing this? I know the store will be packed. So I get there, I've got the kids with me. Thank God the kids were with me, because it was like quite a big setup and there was like 3 other kids that joined and me and my kids. Your worst nightmare, nobody turns up. And I've got a microphone and everything. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm quite a
And you're
confident.
and you're in marketing as well, so you probably feel that even more so. For some reason, I don't know. I can imagine.
It
Yeah.
was horrendous. And, my nanny was there and I was like, you sit over there. And we were like spacing everyone out. The publisher was
Yeah.
there. And the lady from Virgin said, listen, once you start reading, people will come. Like, this always happens. But I think
Mhm.
they normally have Barbie books or dinosaurs. And she came up to me after and said, listen, I'm really sorry that no one came over. So we spoke to quite a few people, and the feedback from the parents was it's a bit too much of a serious topic for my child. And I was like, this is the point.
Oh,
This is the point. It's too serious until it happens to you, and then what? Or it happens
yeah.
up, or that a child sat next to them at school. Like, what are you doing? What are you saying right now?
This is so frustrating because I mean, life in general, like, right? Things happen. And if we are constantly trying to shelter our children from everything that we think doesn't apply to them,
Exactly.
once they get older, we are doing them a disservice. Like, it is our job to guide them, let them be exposed to things in child appropriate ways. And what more child appropriate way to talk about this subject? That is just mind blowing. And I feel as a parent of a child with type 1 and doing the work I do, I feel so frustrated because everything, I guess I'm an advocate first, and I just really need our kids to have a beautiful life and be understood. Like that is it. And also anybody else with any other kind of diabetes too. Uh,
Yeah. And this is the thing. If the parents are ignorant, they're raising a generation of ignorant children. And this is the problem. If it doesn't impact me, I don't need to know about it. And, I think once you're in our world, and it's funny, because it's not funny, but, obviously I've got the diabetes world and then I've got the brain tumor world. And, I've got a really good friend here I was introduced. She'd suffered a brain tumor. She'd had 2 surgeries. She's got the all clear. She's done incredibly well. And she set up a Facebook group around for the Tumor Society. And it's really funny because I am resisting being a part of that community. I don't feel ready. I still feel too traumatized to hear other people's stories because it's still too real. Marley still has scans every 3 months for 5 years. And
mm,
I mentally know that I need to protect myself from hearing anything negative other than he's had a clear scan, we're moving on to the next clear scan. And whereas in the diabetes community, I'm so active and I'm so accepting of this.
mhm,
But with that one, I'm not. So I
right.
get people get scared when it comes to things being wrong with their children. But as you say, it's our job to prepare our children for the world. And type 1 diabetes is something that is so prevalent and so many people are living with. There is not an excuse for not understanding it, or for not supporting it, or not at least being open to listening. And we have all these issues with the pharmaceutical industry, and there's going to be a cure in 5 years, and then the skeptics are saying, but why would they cure it? Why would they cure a disease that you can live a full life with but need medicine every day? Why would they cure that? Isn't that the dream?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
so,
considering that so many people in the future will have diabetes, more people should be aware of it. And I mean, I just want to say, give yourself a lot of grace about the brain tumor group because
yeah.
diabetes alone was enough. And yeah, when I learned you were going through that with your other son, was just shocked and thinking, God give you the strength to do that. But while, yes, it's kind of protecting yourself, but I think it's also important to protect our children to stay optimistic as well, because we don't want them living in a place that's not optimistic. And sometimes, even in the diabetes world, depending on which groups you're exposed to and the culture of those groups and what they talk about, aren't necessarily always healthy if we're trying to raise children that will thrive with diabetes in their life. And the same thing with having had a brain tumor. So I do believe like it's one thing to be ignorant, but it's another thing to be very strategic in how you are taking in information. So,
And I think that's what I've learned is like you have to be ready for the information. And I find that when I meet up with parents who with newly diagnosed children, I want to tell them everything that I didn't know so they don't go through that pain. So when I got the diagnosis, I was in a hospital that didn't educate me properly, and I was with a doctor that was honestly like, I have so much anger towards her for the way she treated me. and for the lack of empathy and understanding. And maybe it's not her fault. She doesn't have a child with type 1. She knows the medical condition. But if you've seen enough parents go through it and you know what you're sending them home to, you know you're sending them home to absolute chaos, to no sleep, to being terrified of food and killing your child, that medicine that can save them can equally kill them, and we can kill our child at a moment's notice, especially with a pump. Wrong number, it goes in. It's happened. We gave him 7 units of insulin when it was meant to be 0.7. He had a great time. He had Fanta, which he'd never tasted. He had, donuts, everything. And then he
Yeah.
was high for about 5 hours. But I was like, be high, I don't care. Like, you're safe.
Yeah.
But they know what you're sending you home to. And I think they have a duty of care to make sure that when you get there, you're not going to lose your mind. Because if you do, who's going to look after your child? And the parent that I'd spoken to, who was diagnosed last October, November, you know, I was trying to tell her loads, and then I had to keep stopping myself because I was like, I'm probably overwhelming her now. So instead, I created I sent her how I manage the carbs and the list of all the food Rocco eats and the measurements of it and how much carbs in that. And I sent her little hypo snacks already bagged up with weight, just to say, this is how you do it, because nobody told me this stuff. But then you also have to learn it for yourself, because it's that journey of learning it
Yeah.
that understand it. And I've given him 5 cranberries today, but the 5 cranberries is too much. I'm going to give him 3 tomorrow and see how that goes. And it's a constant teaching of yourself. And as you're learning, their bodies change. So
Yep.
you're constantly trying to keep up, and then the hormones kick in. And, Dr. Nandi said to me, until he's about 16, 17, this is just going to get worse. And I love Dr. Nandu because he's so sarcastic,
Mm-hmm.
gives you the truth. And I can take that. Okay, well, I'd rather know that this is going to be harder, going to get harder before it gets better. And he tells you with a smile on your face, so you're prepared for it. But at any given second, I can message him and say, I'm scared, I'm panicked,
Mm-hmm.
help me, and he'll be there. Which is, when I found him, everything on my journey changed. And I think that's my biggest piece of advice. Find the right healthcare provider that you feel heard, that you can learn from, and that is accessible, because
Mm-hmm.
diabetes is not a 9 to 5 clinic hours. It is a 2 in the morning. Is my child going to die? Can you help me? And if you don't have a doctor that's willing to give you that, you don't have the support you need.
Yeah, because here there's not a comprehensive team to do it. And similar to you, when Aaron was first diagnosed, nobody understood type 1. There was one endocrinologist in a hospital. He's actually still practicing. And he, didn't, or maybe he did say too much and I don't remember, but nobody could really similarly like explain it, say anything. I knew type 1 was, I was aware of type 1, but I didn't really know about type 1. And I had worked in healthcare before, and they say you're you're a healthcare expert, but you're not. Until you're living with something, you're not. And I'm still not, because I'm not the one that has it. But I just remember sitting there with a nutritionist or educator, and she was supposed to teach us how to carb count. And she kept making mistakes on her calculator. And she's like, no, that's not right. And I just like, what is this? So since, Aaron's dad and I were both working in healthcare, and I grew up in Houston, Texas, what do healthcare people do? They call and they say, who knows about this? Like, what do we do? Because nobody could tell us what to do. They just sent us home with a sliding scale of insulin, and that was it. And here, have some juice boxes on hand in case you have lows, right? Thank goodness
And
Aaron could feel his lows back then.
they don't tell you what happens okay, but if you treated a low and you give too much, then you're going to get a high. And then what you're going
I,
to get a high, you're going to get a low. Nobody teaches you how to balance, give a bit of fast acting and a bit of slow. Like, it's just this puzzle that you're constantly
yep,
trying to. And carb counting is actually so difficult because every packet is different. And if you are terrible with maths like me, that in itself is traumatic. You're out and your packet, oh my, and so I used to have packets of everything, wait, in my bag. Plastic bags, terrible for plastic, but it saved lives on so many occasions. Little plastic bags, all my
hmm,
snacks. This is 5 grams, this is 4 grams, this is 3 grams. So that I didn't have to carb count when I was out, because that panicked moment, I couldn't figure it. Divide it by 100 times by 100. I'm so confused. What am I doing? And now I
right.
don't care about anything. I can look at pretty much anything and know how much insulin he needs.
Oh yeah.
Super skill, right? And I remember I used to take scale. me. I would measure it. I would be like 20 minutes on the clock, right, go. No, you can't eat for 20,
Yeah,
whereas
yeah, yeah, same. Yeah.
well, we roll with it, right? You're a bit low, eat a bit, I'll give you a bit,
Yep.
because I'm confident. But we still get it wrong all the time. And the basics of count the carbs, give insulin is like 1% of what you need to know. What about the activity? What about the time of day? What about the insulin resistance? What about the water? What about all these things? What about how fast something impacts compared to how slow it does? What about the GI of it? I can give you 10 grams of watermelon and give you the same carbs in pineapple or apple. It'll have a totally different impact.
Hmm.
And nobody's telling you this stuff. And, for a diabetic, I think food is your medicine as much as insulin is. But nobody teaches you that. So you have to find it for yourself. And you have to go through this journey of, right, he's going to be vegan. He's only eating fruit because this will help. Right now, he's going to be keto. Right now, he's going to be, only meats, only
Yeah.
cheese. And it's like, okay, what he needs to eat is a balanced, healthy diet. And what I need to do is understand how each of these things impact him and keep a note of it so that next time he has it, I can do a better job.
Right. And then also you can teach him on the way too, as they become older, more mindful about it. I'll never forget there was once I took Aaron out to his favorite burger place. Like, okay, burger, fine, can do with it, the meat, but it's with the fries, if there's a milkshake, everything else, that is disaster. There is no sleeping that night.
Yeah.
And, it was like a treat after school year or something. And so he's like, well, I want like, fries and the peanut butter milkshake. And I was like, this is awful. But then I thought, okay, I have to use this as a teaching moment because his blood sugar was beautiful, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do this, but know that this is probably not gonna like end well with everything because all of that fat, protein, and carb and the way your body breaks that down, it's gonna take a really long time. For those of you that don't have a child with diabetes or do not have diabetes, you will find certain foods bring insulin resistance, and it might look perfect in the beginning. And then hours later, you will have highs forever and ever, and it never seems to come down. So after he ate that, though, he was like, oh, I don't feel so good. I said, really? I said, okay. I said, what do you feel? Like, can you describe it? So sometimes it's just getting them in touch with what they
Yeah.
ate, how it's making them feel. And I noticed that helped him make, once he could become aware, he could make, a little bit better choices. Now it's not always perfect, but very rarely does he do all three of those together because he knows he's not going to feel well and he plays sports. He wants to perform well. And now it affects like studying and concentration and everything.
Wow. And I think that's the next journey for me, right? Is like as I hand this baton over to him at some point in the not, everyone's like, he should be at school on his own. I'm like, no, I may as well give up my job if I'm going to send him on his own because I'm just not ready mentally to process that.
Hmm.
But if I ate a milkshake and burger and fries, I'd feel sick. So
Me
it's
too.
I make choices based on what my eyes want versus what I know my belly is going to feel. And giving them the choice, you gave them a choice. I didn't love that. I'm going to do it differently next time. And this is where I'm up to with the Rocco journey is, what do you think? Oh, you come to me when you're low. What do you think you need? Do you think you've had enough? Should we have more? I'm asking him a lot of questions. So I'm kind of teaching him
Hmm.
as we go through this process. And when that day comes and I've got to hand it over to him, I think that will be even harder because I think this has turned me into a total control freak over his diabetes. And the thought of not being in control of it is more terrifying than the responsibility of being in control of it.
I think I would agree with that. It ebbs and flows, but you'll both find your way. What, before we go, if you could tell yourself one thing at diagnosis, knowing everything you know now, what would that be?
Great question. Um, you know what? Probably that he can handle this. Like whatever happens to me is kind of irrelevant. However I'm feeling is that Rocco is a human who is built for life and he's going to be okay with it. He's going to accept it and he's going to thrive. I think
Amazing.
that's the worry is like, it's not what happens to me, it's what happens to him. But we live in a world with so much great technology and You know, as long as he's happy and he doesn't feel like diabetes ruined his life, I'm fine with it.
I love that. And that's great advice, I think, for everyone listening. Thank you so much for joining me today. And please go out and get Abby's book. I'm not kidding when I say it's just a wonderful book. Yeah, there it is. We'll put a link for you in the show notes. You can also get it at Diapoint Shop, and you can follow Abby on Instagram as well. So we'll give you all of those links so that you can find her and get the book. And if you don't have a child with diabetes, get the book anyway. It's a beautiful book. Just a beautiful book about accepting challenge and things that happen to you in life, and every school library needs one.
You.
Yeah, thank you. Have a great day, everyone.